Well, there are two museums that we're actually highlighting here. One is the American Airpower Museum, which began in 1999, 2000, right here on this spot, where 70 odd years ago, Republic Aviation was building a P-47 fighter every hour. So you can't think of a more appropriate place in the country to house an aviation museum than the true epicenter of the arsenal of democracy. And then over time, what's happened is that we've acquired an armor collection that became so large and so meaningful that it created its own museum, and that is the Museum of American Armor, not far from here. So you put the two together and you have this really powerful, synergistic approach to being able to tell American history to a brand new generation. It's about the veterans, it's about the men who flew in these, it's about the men who died in these vehicles and aircraft, and it's about the legacy that they left us. So from our perspective, it's less about the aircraft, as impressive as they are, and the armor, as impressive as it is, and more about the stories that they tell.
My military career was from 1966 to 1970. I was in the Air Force. I served in Strategic Air Command. I was a B-52 mechanic. I spent most of my hitch upstate New York and spent 6 months on Guam, where the bombers were going to Vietnam every day. After that, I got out in 1970, college, worked for Allstate Insurance for 37 years, retired 4 years ago, so I'm a full-time volunteer now at the Museum of American Armor in Old Bethpage.
I actually served with the 101st Airborne in Vietnam back in 1970. I was an infantryman, arriving in Vietnam at 3 o'clock in the morning on a commercial jet. The minute they landed, they opened the door, they shut all the lights off, and an MP came on board and he says, "I want you off my aircraft in the event of a mortar attack, hit the ground." And I'm like, this is too early, right? So they marched us in. They figured they would take us for breakfast. They marched us into a mess hall that was in 3 feet of water. They built it down in a hole. So that's how my first breakfast in Vietnam was, in water. I was stationed up in the northernmost province, which was called I Corps. I Corps was up north. To me, it was the worst area because it bordered North Vietnam and Laos. Okay? Our base area was Phu Bai, but we didn't spend much time there. I was in the infantry, so our job was out in the mountains looking for the NVA. And we saw plenty of them. I was scared all the time. When I got there, there was a fire base that was under siege. And when you get into the 101st, they send you through 5 days of in-country training to adapt you to how the 101st operates. And the cadre that worked there says you don't want to go to the 3rd Brigade because they're engaged with an enemy force out by this ripcord fire base. So on the final day of graduation, I'm being told, no, I'm going to the 2nd Brigade. I'm going 30 miles south. Wow, I lucked out. So we check into the company area, we get a rucksack, a rifle, and all our equipment, and one guy says to the first sergeant, "Where are we going?" "We're going to the 3rd Brigade. We're assigned to them because of the trouble that's going on up out of Ripcord." That afternoon, I was in a truck going right back to the same place where I had left. I couldn't believe the carnage that was out there. And 5 days later, Nixon decided to close the base and everybody left, but we took a lot of casualties out there.
It's about a people who wanted to do something. That's where it began. It began because of the absence of understanding that people of complexion in those days weren't just something they looked at as nothing, even though that's the behavior the country was going through. But the Tuskegee Airmen was beyond that. We take that away from that. We say, here's a people that want to do something to help the people that they live around. We wanted to show that we could do something too, and we were willing to give it up, and we did. Airmen started back in the 30s. We had brothers, African-American brothers, or the colors, or Negroes, or whatever you want to call them back there in those days, that could fly, but denied the opportunity simply because they weren't accepted in society as an equal. So the proving of yourself is the problem. But the part of the story you want is not my interpretation of it. It's the question that you asked me that I give you that give evidence to the fact that we had the ability to succeed and did. It's a beautiful story. And the movie that you look at, that you see glamorizing that we didn't lose anything. No, we didn't lose anything. We gained a lot. But that was in what we call a presentation or being there. But what we gained was the honor of being able to protect and show that we could do anything anybody else could do, sometimes better. But when you take that camera and you turn it around and you see all the sophistication of aircraft, if that aircraft could talk, it would tell you a hell of a story. But the only guys that can tell you stories is guys like me that want it known that it's not about story, it's about activity, believability. When those airmen climbed up in those cockpits and took off, they didn't know whether they was coming back or not. But that wasn't on their mind. What was on their mind is proving that they could climb up in those cockpits and they could get back. But while they're in those cockpits, they wanted to offer a story. Now that's another story.
Down in Tuskegee, Alabama, while I was in training and wanted to go away for a weekend pass or whatever, riding in the back of the bus, looking around where I could eat or sleep or whatever when I was on a weekend pass, and all that sort of thing. So those are what I remember. But most of all, the wonderful young men that I met there who wanted to be all that they could be, okay? We were all of the same mind and et cetera. And like the song goes, we believed we could fly, okay? And we did it. We did it. And the sad thing about it is it took all these years before this country realized what we accomplished and what we went through. My brother, at the same time I was in training at Tuskegee Army Airfield, my brother was with the 92nd Infantry Division in Italy, okay? He was awarded a Bronze Star for his heroic and whatnot, 5 battle stars, etc., okay? And he would write me and tell me that he saw the Tuskegee Airmen flying over his line in support of what they were doing. So here he was in Italy fighting for this country, a black Air Force, okay, and a black Army. It was a racist thing in a war that this country promoted as being racist. The Germans were racist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they were doing the same thing here in this country to blacks. And you look at the differences now, when they finally acknowledge, okay, what they said in the Constitution. We find these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They knew it from the start. Largely to the performance of the Tuskegee Airmen that proved the Constitution.
Probably my favorite story is the day I got out, because the day you go in, you circle that day on the calendar, you're getting out. And then it finally gets here, and the last thing you do is hand somebody your ID card. They punch some holes in it, and they say, okay. And I said, that's it, I'm out. And the lady says, yep, you're out. And walked out the door, got in my car, and drove home. So that was, you know, the day you wait for. But met a lot of great people, a lot of great memories. I spent 4 years in the Air Force, and then I spent 4 years in college. What I remember about 4 years of college, I could fit on the head of a pin. What I remember about those 4 years in the Air Force, I could probably write a book about it, but nobody would read it. But a lot of great memories, a lot of great people that I met and worked with during those 4 years.
You need to know more about the Stars and Stripes. You need to know more about your Congress, your archive of history. It's not guys like me and good folks like what's behind me, Archer and all the rest of the brothers back there. No, it's not about them. It's about the glory of what they did and how they did what they did. To emphasize, then get no credit for it. Fight like hell over there in Europe and represent something and then come. We had two fights. We had to fight the war and we had to fight the Southern attitude. That hurt. Okay.
I think there's an obligation, literally by anybody who comes through here, to understand what the presentation is all about, and the fact that there are heroes in our own families, some of whom we never met and will never know about. It's our obligation to do a little bit of research in each and every family and find out about the vet who served.